Before I start, I just want to tell you that this is not an episode to listen to with your child if they are still fully embracing the magic of Christmas. If you fall into this camp, go ahead and pop those earbuds in or come back and listen at another time. All right, so Christmas in our house will be a little bit different this year. Well, the truth is, it actually started to change last year when just a few weeks ahead of Christmas Day, my oldest found out the truth about Santa. And not to be overly dramatic, but it was a moment that I had thought about and dreaded for years. I've worked really hard to have an open line of communication with my girls, so I had a feeling that she would come to me when she wanted confirmation of the truth. I knew she wasn't going to be the child that just played along without ever letting me know that the gig was up. And I was dreading it. And I was right. But despite my years of getting mentally prepared and deciding how I wanted to handle that question, I was still caught off guard, and the whole thing hurt my heart. Today, I'm sharing how my daughter found out the truth about Santa and how I navigated that situation. Hi, I'm Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of two. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. I will never forget the day that I was standing in line at Starbucks when my oldest, who was about 3 years old at the time, looked at a pregnant woman and then turned to me and asked, "How do babies get inside the tummy?" I immediately felt panic. I didn't want to lie to her, but I had not prepared myself to answer this question in an age-appropriate fashion for a 3-year-old. And I hadn't even had my coffee yet. So what did I do? I asked her if she wanted a donut, of course. Since she was under the impression that we were just there to grab my coffee, she was thrilled, and her 3-year-old brain briefly forgot about the baby-making question. Once I dropped her off at daycare, I quickly started to read up on various ways to answer her question so that I could decide how I would respond to her the next time she brought it up. Over the next couple of months and years, I started to educate myself on talking to my children about things like sex, puberty, etc. Now you're probably thinking, what the heck does this have to do with Santa? Well, it was during that education process that one of the experts I was listening to said something that really stuck with me. She said, "You need to think about the role that you want to play in your child's quest for answers. If you want to be the expert in your child's life, you need to be willing to answer their questions and tell them the truth. If you don't answer their questions and tell them the truth, they will find another expert." The idea of doing everything that I could to be my children's expert really struck a chord with me. And somehow that quickly got me thinking about Santa and the story that many of us tell our kids about him. Of course, I know there are folks out there who will say that we should not be telling this whole Santa lie to our children. To each their own on this topic. I personally don't feel that I was harmed in any way by believing in Santa, and I absolutely think it made Christmas more magical. So it wasn't that I was against the concept of Santa. My issue was that I knew my daughter was the type who might feel upset or that she was misled when she found out the truth. So I wanted to have a very good plan to explain the truth about Santa without making her feel that she was duped. So when she was probably 5 or 6 years old, I was starting to do a lot of reading on this exact topic. And I remember reading this great piece that recommended telling the truth when you were asked, but then explaining that while yes, you, the parent, are Santa, Santa can really be anyone who wants to be part of the magic of Christmas. That explanation is not doing the recommendation justice at all. It was a very detailed piece with absolute perfect wording, but it was a long time ago that I read it. I remember reading it several times and thinking, yep, this is exactly what I'm going to say. And I got off to a great start because not too long after I read that, there was a day when I was loading the laundry into the washing machine and my daughter walked in and said, I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to tell me the truth. Without thinking much of it, I said, of course. And then she said, are you the tooth fairy? Boom. Here we go, I thought. I took a deep breath, I got down on her level, and I said something along the lines of, I will always tell you the truth. Do you want to know the answer to that question? Yes, she said. And then I explained that I am in fact the tooth fairy. And the tooth fairy is just a fun way to make losing teeth less annoying. You guys, she looked heartbroken. And it absolutely crushed my mama heart. And then I went on to tell her that her sister still didn't know that I was a tooth fairy. And it'd be great if she could still play along. She nodded, and I could tell she was about to launch into other things, like the Easter Bunny, Santa. I could see the wheels turning. So I quickly added, I want you to know that I will always tell you the truth. I can tell that maybe you weren't quite ready for me to be that honest with you about the tooth fairy, because the tooth fairy is fun. Even though you kind of already knew, maybe you didn't quite want to know. So if you're not quite ready to know the truth about little fun things like that, you can always wait a little longer to ask me. She's super sharp, so I knew that she knew exactly what I was talking about. She looked at me, she nodded, and she said, okay. And the question about Santa was put back in the box for a bit. In that moment, there was a little part of me that wondered if she might just play along forever, like I did as a kid. I wondered if she would be reminded of what a bummer it was to lose the fun of believing in the tooth fairy, or at least playing along with it. And I wondered if she might just keep that door of believing in Santa, the idea of Santa, just a little bit open so that she could continue to play along. And she did, until last year, when a child made her feel stupid for doing that. So last December, my daughter and I were in the car. It was just the two of us. And she said something along the lines of, hey, Mom, Santa isn't real, is he? I took a deep breath, immediately feeling regret for not having saved that language that I had read, I don't know, maybe 5 years earlier. And maybe, I don't know, rereading it at some point in the last several years. I tried to quickly gather my thoughts about, okay, what was it that I wanted to say while battling down this, oh, we're about to have this conversation feeling. So I started by asking her why she was asking. And she said a little girl, who I will not name, at school had asked her if she believed in Santa. When she responded by saying that she didn't know, the girl burst out laughing and basically told her not to be ridiculous because, of course, Santa isn't real. She then went on to tell her that it's the parents who are Santa and blah, blah, blah. Basically just totally embarrassing her for not officially knowing or sharing that she knew the truth. Before I share how I responded to my daughter, I want to share a little side story because the fact that this particular little girl spilled the beans really stung. Because just a few weeks earlier at a parent-teacher conference, the teacher had brought up that my daughter had been hanging out with this particular child who has a reputation of not being nice to other children. I let the teacher know that I was hopeful that maybe my daughter could be a positive influence, and as long as my child wasn't being unkind along with this child, I could see the good in this friendship and I wanted to be supportive of it. After that conference, I discussed this with my daughter. I told her that I thought one of her greatest strengths is that she is inclusive of everyone, and she's a great friend. But I reminded her that it was her job to make sure that that child's unkind behavior to others didn't rub off on her. And it was my hope that she could demonstrate being inclusive and that might rub off on the other child. She assured me that she wouldn't be unkind and that everything was fine. And sure enough, it was this child who mocked my daughter for not being, quote, sure about the truth about Santa. So for me personally, I was immediately fuming when she told me the story. So this required me taking a few more deep breaths so I didn't overreact. So as she was telling me what the little girl said, I tried to refocus. And what I responded with was, I'm really sorry that she laughed at you and that she decided it was her place to tell you this. Her response to me was, okay, so you really are Santa, right? And this is where, for the life of me, I could not remember that perfectly crafted response that I had planned to say. So I said something along the lines of, yes, your dad and I are Santa. But the real truth about Santa is that Santa is about the magic of giving. Did you know, well, I guess you didn't know because I'm telling you now, that anyone can actually be Santa? I mean, hasn't it been fun to be surprised with gifts from Santa each year? And your dad and I love surprising you and your sister with gifts. We love to be part of the spirit of Christmas. And now that you know about Santa, you get to decide if you want to be Santa too. And the key to being Santa is spreading the magic by sharing in the spirit of giving. And then I walked her through other examples of where I tried to be Santa. And they're different things that we have done in the community throughout the holiday season. And so I walked her through those examples about how that is the spirit of Santa. I don't remember exactly how she responded because honestly, I feel like I was blacking out from the fact that this whole thing was happening and this child crushed my child. But she seemed upset and she was definitely sad. And when I asked her how she was feeling, it actually became clear that what upset her was that this other child embarrassed her and ruined it for her. She even said something like, I had a feeling you were Santa, but it really hurts my feelings that she decided to tell me that. And then we talked about how that's an example of being unkind. That is an example of taking from someone else's bucket. And if you listen to episode 105, where I talked with a kindergarten teacher, you heard how I love the book about filling each other's buckets. And it's one my kids and I have referenced for years. And so we talked about how that was an example of someone taking from her bucket. And then she shared that it hurt even more because she felt that she had been so kind to this child when others had not been wanting to hang out with her. And it hurt that this child would, what she felt like, turn on her a little bit to make her feel ridiculous when she was one of the few people who had been trying to include her. And that was tough for me. And I think where we left it was we just agreed that that whole situation sucked. And I let her know that I was very sorry that that little girl hurt her feelings and that that little girl took away a piece of the magic of Christmas for her. But I assured her that being Santa can be super fun too. And it's just approaching Christmas in a little bit different way. We kind of wrapped up that conversation by talking about the importance of not being the person who takes away her sister's belief in the magic of Santa, or the person who takes it away from any other child. We agreed that if another child were to ask her if she believed in Santa, she could always say yes. And then if the child called her out, like this child did, she could simply respond that she is Santa, along with her parents, because Santa is about spreading magic and the spirit of giving. So she can still believe in Santa. And do I think she still had a wonderful Christmas last year? Yes. But was it different? Yes. When we went to our annual brunch with Santa, which took place after this conversation, she had no interest in talking to him or telling him what she wanted. She couldn't even bring herself to play along. She didn't write him a letter on Christmas Eve for the first time. Again, she just looked crushed as her sister wrote the letter. I think it just hurt. And I didn't put the slightest bit of pressure on her to do either of those things. But it did make me sad to see her not be able to enjoy that fun part of childhood anymore. It's almost like once she officially knew the truth, she couldn't play along. And as I cleaned up Christmas last year, I couldn't help but wonder if that was the last year that I would have anyone in my house who would believe in Santa, because I don't know what's to come this year for my other daughter. I'm recording this episode at the beginning of November, so the season has not quite yet begun. As I look back on that conversation last year, first of all, it still hurts my heart. But what I can tell you is that I didn't use the perfect words that I had read. But I did say something along the lines of what I had planned to say. I do feel like I got the concept across, even though still I couldn't tell you what those perfect words were, and man, they were good. But I feel confident that I did a pretty good job not totally crushing my sweet little girl's heart, while also maintaining my place as her expert, the person that she can count on for the truth. So that is how my daughter found out the truth about Santa. I know that hearing and reading other parents' experiences always helps me process how I hope to handle situations with my children. And last year, when I had surveyed my Instagram followers about whether they would want me to share this story, many people said yes. So I am not here to say that you should handle the Santa situation the way I did. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what the right answer is. And honestly, there probably isn't a right answer, like so many things in parenting. I just want to encourage you to think about how you want to handle it, and then to realize it's okay if it doesn't all go the way you perfectly plan. It's okay if you black out like I felt like I did, and you muddle through it a bit. but having a plan makes muddling through a little bit easier. So cheers to a wonderful holiday season with all of your families. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.